A dollar from early 2020 buys about 78 cents worth of goods today. Nothing was spent. Nothing was lost. Nothing was stolen. At least not visibly. The money sat still, and a fifth of its value walked away. Where did it go? Because value does not simply evaporate. When purchasing power leaves one place, it shows up somewhere else. And understanding who ends up holding it is the difference between being on the paying side of inflation and the collecting side for the rest of a financial life. The mechanism first. What inflation actually is, stripped of jargon. Purchasing power measures the buying power of money. It is influenced by inflation, an increase in the general level of prices, measured by indexes like the Consumer Price Index. When prices increase, purchasing power decreases. The Consumer Price Index tracks the average price of a fixed basket of goods a typical household buys: food, housing, transportation, medical care. And its movement is the official measure of how fast money is losing value. The recent numbers tell the story of why everything feels more expensive. Inflation peaked at 9.1% in June 2022, the highest rate since 1981. From January 2020 through April 2026, the Consumer Price Index rose roughly 29%. Food is up around 25% from its 2020 baseline. Energy up around 26%. Shelter up around 21%. The feeling that everything got more expensive is not a perception problem. It is arithmetic. Prices rose by more than a quarter in 6 years, and unless income rose by the same percentage, the gap came directly out of living standards. Now the question that almost never gets answered: where does the value actually go? The first destination is anyone holding debt. Inflation is a wealth transfer from lenders and savers to borrowers. This is the single most underexplained fact in personal finance. A person who borrowed $300,000 in 2020 still owes the same nominal dollars, but each of those dollars is now worth roughly 22% less in real terms. The debt shrank in real value without a single extra payment being made. Meanwhile, the person who kept $300,000 in cash over the same period watched the same 22% of real value drain out of it. Same inflation, opposite outcomes. The difference was not intelligence or effort, it was which side of the ledger each person was standing on. The second destination is asset owners. Inflation pushes up the price of real things: houses, businesses, stocks, land, because those things produce value that rises along with prices. The person who owned assets through the last 6 years saw their prices inflate alongside everything else. The person holding only cash watched their money stay numerically identical while everything it could buy moved further away. Inflation does not treat everyone equally. It quietly rewards the people who own things and quietly taxes the people who hold money. The third destination is the issuer of the currency itself. When more money enters circulation, through government spending, stimulus, and central bank policy, each existing dollar represents a slightly smaller share of the economy. Economists have a name for the value captured this way, and it is worth knowing: seigniorage, sometimes called the inflation tax. It is the only tax that requires no legislation, no filing, and no notice. It collects automatically from everyone holding the currency in proportion to how much cash they hold and for how long. And here is the part that makes it personal: the salary illusion. A salary of $60,000 in 2020 that has not risen is effectively worth about $47,600 in 2020, purchasing power today. A real pay cut of more than $12,000. A job paying $60,000 in 2020 needed to pay at least $76,080 by 2026 just to maintain the same real purchasing power before any actual raise. Most workers who received 2% to 3% annual raises during this period lost ground in real terms. Every year without a raise is a pay cut. Every raise below the inflation rate is a smaller pay cut. The paycheck number going up while its real value goes down is the exact illusion that keeps most people from noticing the transfer happening. The number on the payslip grows, and the life it affords shrinks. The long horizon makes the stakes unmistakable. Cumulative US inflation from 2000 through 2025 exceeded 90%, meaning $50,000 in the year 2000 required $95,000 in 2025 to buy the same goods and services. At just 3% inflation, $1,000 in cash becomes $744 of purchasing power after 10 years, $554 after 20, and $412 after 30. Even at the central bank's own 2% target, the officially desired rate, cash loses nearly half its value over a 30-year working life. The erosion is not a malfunction of the system. It is the system operating exactly as designed. Which leads to the only question that matters: how to get on the collecting side. The first move is refusing to hold more idle cash than necessary. Money in a 0.1% savings account while inflation runs at 3% is effectively losing 2.9% of purchasing power every year. An emergency fund belongs in a high-yield account earning enough to roughly match inflation. Everything beyond the emergency fund belongs in assets that grow faster than prices do. Cash is for safety and near-term spending. It was never designed to store long-term wealth, and it punishes anyone who uses it that way. The second move is owning the things inflation inflates. A broad index fund holds ownership in hundreds of companies whose revenues and prices rise with inflation over time, which is why the stock market's long-run return has historically outpaced inflation by a wide margin, and why every previous video about index investing was, underneath it all, an inflation defense. Real assets, property, businesses, productive investments, sit on the receiving end of rising prices. Cash sits on the paying end. The third move is auditing income annually against the real number. The inflation rate is public. Comparing every raise against it takes 1 minute, and any raise below it is a real terms pay cut that deserves to be named as one, in salary negotiations and in career decisions. The workers who lost the most ground over the past 6 years were rarely the ones earning the least. They were the ones who never checked. Inflation is not a temporary crisis that passes. It is a permanent current running underneath every financial decision, slowly moving value away from cash holders, salary earners who never renegotiate, and savers in near-zero accounts, toward borrowers, asset owners, and anyone positioned to let rising prices work for them instead of against them. The current never stops. The only choice available is which direction to face while standing in it. Drop a comment with the price increase that has been the most noticeable in daily life. The next video covers the specific assets that have historically beaten inflation, ranked by how reliably they have done it.